hard for the family, what we've been going through.
Tonight, the no appeal decision of the Gerald Stanley not guilty verdict has people across Canada looking for what comes next.
Grandchildren, it's best when they grow up at home.
Families in Labrador tell their truths at the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. Good evening. Happy International Women's Day. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward. Family, friends, and supporters of Colton Bushy are trying to move forward after another shocking blow. The Crown Prosecutor's Office said it won't appeal the not guilty verdict for Gerald Stanley, the man accused of killing Bushy. Brittany Hobson brings us more.
Gerald Stanley, the man accused of killing 22-year-old Colton Bushy, won't face another trial. There will be no appeal. Alvin Baptiste, Bushy's uncle, says the possibility of an appeal was the family's last chance at justice. Now they no longer have that.
There's a lot of disappointment in that, and a lot of people will feel that all Indigenous people, including my community, all felt like we're denied justice again. And they keep telling us to have faith, but how can we have faith when we're denied justice?
Last month, a 12-person jury found Gerald Stanley not guilty in the shooting death of Bushy, who is from the Red Pheasant Cree Nation. Yesterday, on March 7th, the prosecutor's office said in order to appeal, there has to be an error in law.
The Crown cannot appeal a disagreement over the facts, the interpretation of witness evidence, or because a particular perspective leads to the opinion that the verdict was unreasonable.
After the verdict came out, it prompted several groups across Canada to take to the streets to stand in solidarity with the family. Autumn Eagle Speaker was the organizer for the event in Calgary. She disagrees with the Crown's reason for not appealing. She says evidence that came out during the trial point to a sloppy investigation.
When you have all of these different forensic analysts and specialists that are disputing what had happened throughout the case or wondering what happened to missing evidence, like there are so many things that point to gross errors. And for the Crown to say that it was handled in the best manner possible is a complete farce.
But the Crown says complaints with police are separate from their office and cannot be used to grant an appeal. Geraldine Webster, an organizer for the BC rally last month, believes investigations into police conduct has been ignored in the past and says one is needed now.
They're not willing to look at the different systems, like from the ground up. So like police and RCMP and how they investigate different things is very sloppy, very neglectful. And I think Canada's very afraid to look at itself and to take accountability for.
A public investigation has been ordered to investigate police conduct during the case. For now, Bushy's family is looking for a way to move forward.
It's been hard for the family and what we've been going through, but we're a strong family and we'll continue.
Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
To Happy Valley-Goose Bay, Labrador now, where the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls held 2 days of hearings. APTN's Justin Brake brings us this report on day one of testimony.
So I fought, and I fought hard, and I fought with all of my might.
Kim Campbell-McLean testified about her own assault as a youth and outlined the ways Inuit women in Labrador are vulnerable to violence.
Lack of housing, and overcrowded housing, food insecurity, lack of court services in the community where we have traveling courts as well, and our isolation in itself is another factor, because many times a woman has to stay in the same community with her perpetrator. If a woman wants to leave or decides to leave the household due to violence, if she doesn't have an income, she may decide not to leave. She may decide to stay for the children.
McLean would like to see federal funding for women's shelters in the communities so women don't have to leave in search of safety.
Child Youth and Family Services failed us.
Silpa and Gordon Obed of Nain identified another key issue they say is contributing to women's vulnerability, the child welfare crisis. Their son died of tuberculosis in 2015, leaving behind 4 children and his wife, Katie. The Obeds testify that after their son's death, the province's Child, Youth and Family Services took the children from their mother, whose mental health was declining.
She was lost.
She took in a cousin who had recently got out of jail, and then the abuse began, they testified. Their daughter-in-law started distancing herself from the family.
She would be silent. I would go into the room.
Then, 2 days before Christmas, the oldest son, just an adolescent, visited his mother's apartment in Nain. He walked into her bedroom where he found her body.
She was covered with a blanket. And she opened the blanket thinking she was sleeping. She opened the blanket. She had a knife in her heart.
The hurt didn't end there, the Obeds said. 3 of their children are still in foster care. Silpa testified the youngest, now 14, messages her on Facebook, saying he misses his mom.
And me and my husband not there to hold him and say, we love you, Kyle. And they're so far away from us. And they need hugging and loving from their family who's home.
Gordon Obed believes the removal of the children from their mother played a role in the events leading to her death.
We must let the Department of Child, Youth and Family Services know that this don't help. We must let the Department of Child, Youth and Family Services know that children, grandchildren is best when they grow up at home.
Around a dozen survivors and family members testified Wednesday from Innu and Inuit communities in Labrador and Mi'kmaq communities in Newfoundland. Justin Brake, APTN National News, Happy Valley-Goose Bay.
Today, the National Inquiry heard more tragic stories of Inuit women being murdered in Newfoundland and Labrador. APTN's Justin Brake has more.
Inuk elder Charlotte Wolfrey told the story of how her daughter Deidre was killed by her partner in a murder-suicide in the remote community of Rigolet 25 years ago.
I got hold of David and he told me that Job and Dee were both dead and that Job had shot her and then he shot himself.
Wolfrey said Deidre, a 21-year-old mother of 4, was trying to leave the violent relationship, and that she had called the RCMP in Goose Bay that day for help, but was told there was nothing police could do unless her partner did something to her.
She knew she was going to die and there was no protection services for her.
For years, Wolfrey fought to have RCMP stationed in the remote communities on Labrador's north coast. 2 new stations were eventually established. A longtime advocate for women's rights, Wolfrey offered the inquiry recommendations, among them establishing women's shelters in all northern communities and reforms to the justice system to ensure justice for victims of violence.
Canada funds Indigenous communities differently, and I hope that this will be a recommendation that to treat all Indigenous communities the same.
On Thursday, the inquiry heard from 21-year-old Amina Evans-Harlick, whose mother, Mary Evans-Harlick, was murdered in St. John's when Amina was just 6 years old. Mary was at a friend's house and wanted to go home, Amina testified.
She threatened to call the police because this man wouldn't let her leave. He strangled her with her rawhide necklace and then put her in a sleeping bag and then put her underneath a crawl space under the stairs.
Harlick said she likes to go for walks on her own and that the trauma of her mother's death still impacts her today.
And sometimes I think that someone is going to be right behind me, and so I start running from wherever I am and just keep running until I feel safe again.
In 2006, Scott Gauthier was convicted of second-degree murder and is eligible for parole in 2023. Harlick said she fears he might come after her, too.
I feel like I'm just going to be another statistic.
She wants education reform so young Canadians know more about Indigenous peoples and about missing and murdered Indigenous women. She's also calling for better services for families of victims. More than 25 families and survivors testified over 2 days in Labrador. Most said they want change so Indigenous women and girls can be safe in their homes and communities. Justin Brake, APTN National News, Happy Valley-Goose Bay.
Time for a quick break. We'll be right back.
I'm Annette Francis in Ottawa. Coming up later in the show, I'll tell you about a rising singer-songwriter from Nunavut who's making her way in the music industry. That's later on APTN National News.
Here's a look at Friday's weather outlook starting on the East Coast. Rain and +2 in Halifax, +3 with sprinkles in Charlottetown. Sunny and 6 below in Happy Valley-Goose Bay and Nain, -3 in Cartwright. Snow and -2 in Sept-Îles, +2 in Saguenay, 0 in Chibougamau. Cloudy and +1 in Windsor, Peterborough, and Ottawa. -5 in Timmins, Kapuskasing, and Big Trout Lake, where snow is expected. Sunny in northern Manitoba, -8 in Churchill, -6 in the Paw. -2 in Barons River and Dauphin, -3 under the sun in Winnipeg. A cloudy day in Saskatchewan, -2 in Estevan and Regina, +2 in Swift Current, -4 in Meadow Lake, and welcome back. Today is International Women's Day, and people across the world are celebrating the accomplishments and looking at the challenges faced by women and girls. Our reporter Charlotte Mort-Jacobs sat down with one community member in Yellowknife who spent years supporting women in need.
I think just being an Aboriginal woman, working in a role that I do, is a benefit.
For those working to help women escape violence, support happens every day. Debbie Rimchinsky has been working at the women's shelter in Yellowknife for over a decade, serving women and children from all 33 communities.
And growing up in an abusive, family, there was a lot of abuse. And wanting to help and not having anywhere to go as a child, or my mother, not anywhere to go, nobody would help or do anything. And so in the back of my mind, I always thought one day there will be. And so when I had the opportunity to work here, I thought this was great, to be able to just help everybody that walks through the door.
While the gravity of client situations are heavy, the benefits are worth it.
It changes you, and you look at everything different when you work in a role like this. Like, you look at things on the outside a lot different. You understand abuse, and so you'll find yourself, when you're someplace, it's like, you'll see somebody yelling, and it's like, that's not a way of life. That's abuse. That's verbal abuse.
Rybczynski says the North faces unique challenges that put women at risk, such as limited transportation, isolation, and lack of RCMP in some communities.
Also, though, in the communities they don't really recognize domestic abuse. They just don't recognize it at all, and it's just like a lot of it is, I've lived with it, or my grandparents have lived with it, I've put up with it. Then everybody puts up with it. A lot of times in the communities, they will support the men more than the women.
A report last year showed the NWT is having a higher rate of violence against women compared to the national average. Still, some things are improving, such as the emergency protection orders, which were introduced to the territories back in 2005.
An emergency protection order is, it's like having a mini court on the phone with a woman, and she gets to stay in her home, could be for a woman or for a man, and the abuser gets removed.
What will help end violence against women? For those working in the North, they say it's education.
Well, I think you need to start young. In order to change a generation, you need to teach them from when they're young that that's not a healthy relationship, and what is and what isn't.
Charlotte Mark Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
A young Inuit singer-songwriter is making waves in the music industry. Here's Annette Francis now with a story of an artist who's spreading messages of cultural pride, history, hope, and healing.
I heard a story about some man coming to our land looking for black gold.
Kelly Fraser is making quite a name for herself. At just 24 years old, she's nominated for a Juno Award for her second album. She first heard the news last month from a friend.
I burst out crying and thought of my mother right away, and then all those people that told me I couldn't do it, I thought of them and I was like, here I am doing it.
Fraser grew up in Sanikalak, Nunavut. She says music has always been a part of her life.
My mom had a 70s, 80s Saturday morning radio show, so I listened to a lot of really great artists like Tina Turner, Elvis, like all kinds of artists, Joan Jett.
After learning to play the guitar at age 11, she formed a band at 15 and wrote her own songs. She says she was always a fan of American singers and rappers, but felt the music didn't represent who she was.
I wanted to hear about someone that went through what I went through, which is a very unique place to come from, which is the Arctic, and I wish somebody would kind of talk about it in the kind of music I enjoy.
Fraser says her songs have a lot of meaning. They tell the struggles of suicide, the social issues, and the painful history of her people.
I work with amazing people around me, and I overcome the negative things people say with the support of people around me. And I didn't always have that support. I had to really prove myself that I'm a serious artist with a message to tell to people all over the world, and people are respecting that. And
Fraser hopes to build on the Juno nomination to showcase her music and inspire a new generation.
I'm hearing that a lot of people feel proud of my music. They're proud of the messages I'm sending, because the more people are educated about Inuit, the less racism will receive, and also because I'm building up these songs for people to listen to in the future.
The Juno Awards will take place on March 25th in Vancouver. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Good luck to Kelly and the other Juno nominees. Follow-up now on a racist graffiti that someone spray-painted on school property in Nova Scotia. As CTV's Ryan McDonald reports, the graffiti may be gone, but the problem behind it is still here.
The graffiti is gone at East Antigonish Education Centre, but the school grounds are empty too. Closed today after RCMP say threats were made against it on social media a day after the school was targeted by racist graffiti. On nearby Buktinkak First Nation, young children were playing as usual, almost blissfully unaware of what's going on. But for parents, this is simply unsettling.
It's scary. It's too close to home. You see this on the news in the States, and it's unacceptable.
The community's chief says students from Buktinkak will be kept home the rest of the week until the band council and school board can come up with a plan going forward. In an interview with Steve Murphy, he says this isn't the only racism kids have been dealing with.
If you follow some of the social media posts provided by some of the youth in our community, you'll find that it does exist within, not just within the school system itself, but within the larger society.
While the alleged threats were discovered on social media, RCMP say initially they were made verbally. The Mounties wouldn't get into specifics about the nature of the threats.
The individual posted on Facebook that they had heard someone make a threat towards the school. So as a result of that, in consultation with the Strait Regional School Board, a decision was made to keep the students at home today.
School board officials say they hope to reopen the school tomorrow. There will be a police presence along with student assemblies that were supposed to happen today.
These are not acceptable, and I don't believe it's a part of who we are, and it's not a part of who the greater community is.
I graduated from that school, and I've had friends, non-Native friends, all these years, and I'm still in contact with them, and I want to see that for my children.
A plea for everyone to get along, regardless of race. Ryan McDonald, CTV News, Monastery, Nova Scotia.
Time for another quick break, but stick around, there's more to come. But first, here's Todd Lamarand with a look at tonight's Nation to Nation.
Hello, I'm Todd Lamarand, and here's what's coming up on Nation to Nation. Public Safety Minister Ralph Goodall hosted a one-day summit on guns and gangs. Indigenous youth entering a gang lifestyle have been a growing problem. However, a woman who works for a program to prevent that tells us there's still hope. As well, the National Inquiry finally asked for more time and money to get the job done. Chief Commissioner Marion Buller tells us why she's confident the work will get done in 2 years. And a Nunavut MLA wants more answers on the talks to transfer federal powers to the territory. That's all coming up right after the national news.
Here's the rest of Friday's weather outlook, picking back up in northern Alberta, -4 in High Level and Grand Prairie. Cloudy, but 6 above in Medicine Hat, 1 degree warmer in Lethbridge. In BC, +8 in Penticton, Vancouver, Tofino, Campbell River, and Bella Coola. +2 in Prince George and Smithers, -2 in Dease Lake. In Yukon, -10 in Old Crow, -11 in Rock River. Over to NWT, -10 in Yellowknife and Norman Wells, -5 in Fort Liard, sunny and 25 below in Sax Harbor, -15 in Inuvik and Colville Lake. In Nunavut, -13 in Repulse Bay, 22 below in Cambridge Bay, a mild -9 in Cape Dorset, -13 on Friday in Iqaluit. Welcome back. Former NHLer Jonathan Chichu has announced his retirement from professional hockey. Chichu is from Moose Factory, Cree Nation in Northern Ontario. He played 6 seasons with the NHL's San Jose Sharks, scoring 56 goals, as you may remember, in 2006, taking home the league's Rocket Richard Trophy. Chichu retired yesterday, playing out his final seasons in the Russian KHL League. What an exciting player he was to watch. And that's your APTN National News for this Thursday, and a happy International Women's Day to all of you out there, to my incredible colleagues here at APTN National News. Of course, for news anytime, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. Nation to Nation with Todd Lamarand is just minutes away. I'm Dennis Ward. Have a great night. We'll see you back here tomorrow.